Imagine earning a seemingly middle-class salary, holding a stable federal job, a job often viewed as the epitome of security, only to find yourself penniless, relying on food banks, and on the brink of eviction within weeks. This wasn't a nightmare for a few. It was a stark, immediate reality for hundreds of thousands of dedicated U.S. federal workers during the recent government shutdown. With over 800,000 employees furloughed or working without pay, the shutdown was more than a political impasse. It was a brutal, unscheduled stress test on the economic fragility of the American workforce. It peeled back the shiny veneer of perceived prosperity, laying bare the deeply entrenched and often hidden U.S. poverty crisis. A recent study showed that 4 out of 10 Americans can't cover a $400 emergency, and the plight of federal workers tragically put a human face on this alarming statistic. The illusion of security, federal jobs, and financial fragility. The narrative of the steady, secure federal job has long been a bedrock of the American dream. These are positions that, on paper, represent a solid step into the middle class, often with good benefits and reliable salaries. However, the shutdown revealed a disturbing truth. Security is an illusion when wage stagnation and the rising cost of living have hollowed out the financial resilience of even these seemingly stable workers. While the average federal worker's salary might appear substantial, an analysis by the Economic Policy Institute, EPI, indicates that over the last decade, real inflation-adjusted wages for a significant portion of the workforce, including many entry and mid-level federal employees, have barely moved, if not declined. The median household income in the U.S. is roughly $74,580, yet for a substantial number of federal employees, particularly those in lower general schedule GS pay grades, their annual income often falls between $25,000 and $50,000. When a 2-week paycheck, which for many is a financial margin between stability and crisis, is suddenly suspended, the entire economic foundation crumbles. This wasn't just about a few low-wage workers. It was a mass-scale exposure of how close to the financial edge a significant segment of the American middle class operates. The shutdown as an economic stress test. Statistics of desperation. The government shutdown served as an unprecedented, live-action demonstration of the devastating effects of income volatility on household finances. The immediate and widespread need for emergency aid was staggering. Reports from across the country documented federal workers lining up at pop-up food banks, a site usually reserved for those in chronic economic distress. The Transportation Security Administration, TSA, and Coast Guard, 2 agencies heavily impacted, saw their employees, many of whom are essential and thus forced to work without pay, face immediate financial hardship. In just the first 3 weeks of the shutdown, major charitable organizations reported a 400% surge in requests for financial assistance and food aid from federal employees. The Federal Reserve's findings, which revealed that 37% of Americans would struggle to pay an unexpected $400 bill, were chillingly confirmed. For a worker earning $50,000 annually, a missed bi-weekly paycheck is approximately $1,923 before taxes. Missing 2 paychecks, a loss of nearly $4,000, is an insurmountable debt mountain for families already juggling rent, car payments, and child care costs that often consume over 50% of their monthly income. The shutdown didn't create poverty. It merely stripped away the thin veil of monthly income that was holding a pre-existing crisis at bay. The geography of hardship, high-cost areas and low-grade workers. The impact of the shutdown was disproportionately cruel in high-cost-of-living areas. In metropolitan hubs like Washington, D.C., New York, and parts of California, where many federal workers are clustered, the median rent alone can consume over 40% of a GS5 or GS7 worker's income. A federal employee making $45,000 a year in the D.C. area, a region with a cost of living roughly 16% higher than the national average, is living paycheck to paycheck by necessity, not by choice. The geographic pay adjustments federal workers receive often fail to adequately keep pace with the hyperinflated costs of housing, transportation, and childcare in these economic powerhouses. Furthermore, the shutdown exposed a critical vulnerability within specific federal agencies. Essential workers, such as air traffic controllers and Border Patrol agents, who are legally required to show up for work, were denied unemployment benefits while working without pay, exacerbating their crisis. This dynamic created a class of the working poor, individuals performing critical government functions who were simultaneously being pushed into destitution by the very government they served. Systemic roots, wage stagnation, and the shrinking safety net. To understand how federal workers went broke, one must look beyond the temporary political crisis to the systemic economic policies that have eroded the American worker stability over decades. The crisis is rooted in two major factors: persistent wage stagnation and the erosion of the social safety net. While productivity in the U.S. has risen by over 69% since the 1970s, average hourly compensation for non-management workers has only increased by about 16% in real terms. This means that an ever smaller share of economic growth is flowing into the pockets of the working class, federal or otherwise. Compounding this, the ability for an average family to weather a financial shock has been diminished. While federal employees typically have good health benefits, they often lack the robust liquid savings necessary to cover emergency expenses. The entire crisis underscores a fundamental national failure. A significant portion of the workforce, even those with stable government jobs, are only one or two missed paychecks away from financial catastrophe. The shutdown didn't just expose the federal workers' fragility. It was a powerful, undeniable mirror reflecting precarity of the modern American economy. The aftermath and the urgent call to action. The government eventually reopened, and the federal workers received their back pay, providing immediate relief. However, the long-term emotional and financial scars remain. Many incurred significant debt, drew down retirement savings, or missed critical mortgage and bill payments, damaging their credit scores and long-term financial health. The lesson learned is a sobering one. No job is truly crisis-proof in an economy where the median worker lacks a sufficient financial buffer. This event should serve as a wake-up call to policymakers, demanding an urgent reassessment of wage growth, affordable housing, and the need for more robust emergency savings mechanisms for the working populace. The next shutdown or the next economic shock is a matter of when, not if. If we fail to address the systemic issues of low financial reserves and high cost of living, we are essentially guaranteeing that another hundreds of thousands of dedicated Americans will once again face the shameful and heartbreaking choice between feeding their families and paying their rent. The U.S. poverty crisis is not just an issue for the unemployed. It's a structural vulnerability for the working class, and the federal shutdown proved it.